So I recently opened up a position in a South Korean ETF, the Franklin South Korea ETF, I think is the official name. And I did so because there are some interesting things going on with that stock, and it's performing at a level that I think is worth paying attention to. So first, to cap things off, the South Korean ETF that I invested in, I only put like $100 in or so, might put in some more, but the stock has been growing aggressively, or the ETF, I should say, has been growing aggressively. And currently right now it's mostly concentrated between two companies, Samsung and SK Hynix, or Hynix, I forget exactly how the name is pronounced, but essentially, both of those companies supply semiconductors, high bandwidth memories, and just a lot of the actual hardware that AI depends on to function. And it's interesting because, when you look at what the hardware is designed to do and how it works, some interesting things start to pop up, right? Namely, for example, on the semiconductor side, high bandwidth memory and things like that, these aren't things that are just, easy to compete against, because, creating, say, another factory, for example, can take billions of dollars, right? And several years, as well as, accumulating the engineering IQ you even need to, fabricate these things, right? And then also, as things stand right now, there is a huge demand constraint, for these chips. And as a result, you can imagine what it does to the price, right? But I would say, outside of like the typical, investing in constraints and going where the actual value is, the more interesting thing, in my opinion, is that the country as a whole has a declining population, right? And as a result, they are not getting the same level of domestic capital inflows they need to keep funding their government and just like society as a whole. And so they're becoming increasingly dependent on foreign capital, right? And one of the big pushes they've been making there is to help make their companies more attractive to outside investors, right? Who typically avoid their markets for a very interesting reason. And that's namely that a lot of big corporations in South Korea are actually family owned. And because they're family owned and have been family owned for years, right, there is this battle that's happening between shareholders and, the actual family owners of these companies, because their interests are competing against each other, right? And basically, when it comes to the cash side of things, these sides clearly have different goals when it comes to that stuff, right? When it comes to the families themselves, they like to take a lot of that cash and reinvest it into their own business interests and so forth, whereas the shareholders are more focused on seeing, hey, how can we take this cash and reinvest it into the company and continue to grow, right? And like return value to the shareholders as well, And so as a result, it's just kept the valuation of a lot of these companies depressed, really. And now the government is working on finding a way to be able to essentially, reinflate those valuations to where they should be. And so it's a very interesting dynamic to watch, right? Because I guess when you kind of look at the stock as a whole, it kind of has these two interesting tailwinds that are starting to, the market as a whole, it kind of has these two tailwinds at play here, right? Because on one side, if the government's able to successfully get the valuation of these companies like properly repriced, right, then that's a very strong increase in the value of the stocks, basically doing nothing else, right? Aside from just like getting these stocks priced appropriately. And then also, they currently provide a lot of the hardware constraints that we experience with AI today. And so if you go and actually look at the performance on the FLKR, you will actually see that it's quite impressive. Now, this is the part where I have to come back to earth, because there are clearly risks here, and there's a reason why I only invested so little to start with. The first thing being is that the golden rule applies, right? Past performance doesn't equal future results. And we have no idea, first off, if the attempts to reprice and attract, get these companies repriced and attract more foreign capital will continue to pay off, or if things will happen, right, such as the families within these companies start to push back or whatever have you. There's just a lot of different ways that momentum could be interrupted, right? And that could happen at a moment's notice, right? So that's one big risk. The next is that because their economy is so concentrated in really, like I would say, a few like really big companies, if there is any, in my view, any slowdown or hint of a slowdown in this AI push, then that could immediately send, trends back in the opposite direction, right? And so obviously it's important to do some due diligence here and know what you're getting into in the event that, something does happen, you don't want to get caught with your pants down, right? So there's that. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very healthy way for me to just get some international exposure for one, right? And then get some additional AI exposure as well in a different way that's not like included in my VTSAX. So yeah, very curious to keep monitoring this trend and seeing what develops, and then just see how this play pans out. And yeah, who knows, right? If some of this AI stuff really begins to get some legs underneath it, might be looking at some solid gains, and if not, then hey, lesson learned, right? So all right, that's all I have for today, and until next time, peace.